You can do an intro.
I will do that intro later. So
Okay.
Macaulay Kincaid, veteran of the Ranching Reboot podcast. In fact, we were just talking before the show a few minutes ago that Macaulay was episode 3. And if I've done my job on the release schedule, everything's already recorded now. I didn't plan this. So 2 weeks ago, we had the special with Hobbs and Tori. He was episode 1, our first guest. And then last week should have been Michael Kinsey, who was episode number 2. And now we're here with Macaulay Kincaid, episode number 3. And let's just say that I don't have any plans for Mike Calicrete next week. Sorry to burst any bubbles. There'll be something new coming next week. So Mac, how you been, buddy?
Dude, I've been on a roller coaster here the last 18 months. You said it's been 18 months since I was last on here.
Right.
It's been a lot of ups and downs. Yesterday was definitely a down. We lost someone in our community that meant a lot to my wife and I. Man, Mark, Lester Soul, rest in peace, buddy. He was a good one. He died yesterday in a straight truck accident. Good farmer, good friend of mine. He actually sowed my very first cover crop for me back when I didn't have any equipment. So guy meant a lot to me, and like I said, a lot of ups and downs this year. But you know, there's been some positives too out there, on this farm. But last 24 hours been weighing pretty heavy in my wife and I's hearts, and I'm just so thankful to be able to do this and kind of bring my energy back up because I kind of been down a little bit of a down mood the last 24 hours, but this kind of got me excited, so that's good.
Okay. Well, you're from what I know of you, Mac, you're a hard guy to get down. You're always smiling, you're always full of energy. That's one of the things I love about you.
I appreciate that, man. Like I said, you just got to stay positive. I kind of trying to surround myself with optimist people, and you're one of those. Every time we talk, it's normally about an opinion or an idea that you and I have, and we bounce ideas off each other. And I just like to surround myself with positive people. That's why my group of friends. I don't know if you've ever been around Ray Archuleta or not, but that dude's energy is unmatched. I mean, it is insane how much energy that guy can flow.
I can't even tell you how many times somebody said Ray Archuleta, and I've looked at his name on a pad that says, "Get these people on the podcasts." And every time somebody says his name, it makes a little tally mark. And I'm about running out of room to make tally marks next to Ray's name. I need to just go ahead and do it. But it seemed like a couple of months ago, I was at a point where I was kind of struggling to find guests and or struggling to make connections. And then one day everything just kind of clicked. And now I'm scheduled pretty far out. And
Good,
I'll take
good.
it. I'll take it. And so sometimes when you're talking to somebody, it's kind of difficult. It's like, yeah, hey, let's do a podcast. Well, when are you available? I don't really have any recording slots until like mid-October right now. And they're kind of like, maybe I can't put that on my schedule quite yet. So I've run into that, and it's learning how far out to schedule is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, you there?
Yep, we're
I
here.
lost you for. Sorry about that. I lost you just for a second. No, I mean, if you ever need Ray's contact, man, just let me know, and I can definitely get that for you. Ray, we only live about 60 miles away from each other, so me and that guy, I have learned so much off of him, and we have bounced ideas off of each other. And he every time I'm with him, he teaches me something new. And the way Ray can look at a soil and describe how he sees that soil, it's like an art, man. It's like one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. I mean, he'll be like, look at the destratosphere and look at the aggregation that we have going on here and the rooting zones. And you know that glomalin's forming through the mycorrhizae because look at this top, 4 inches of soil and how aggregated it is. And I sent you that picture earlier of my soil, my longest running no-till cover crop soil with cattle on it. And that soil, we've been dry. We cut off about June 3rd. We've been fairly dry from my area. And so, there's no moisture in the top part of the inches, but we still have good structure and we have a lot of root structure inside that. And that's on row crop. I look at my pastures and I cannot believe the resilience that my pasture, is sustaining with how dry we've been. It's incredible. But like I said, Ray just has this beautiful art of describing things. And he was at my field day this year with Doug Peterson. And crazy thing, really crappy deal actually. We about a week before my field day, we had I think 10 inches of rain.
Oh
And
wow.
so, I live next to the river. And so my field day was lakefront property. I literally had water 10 feet from my house and my pasture was underwater.
That's
So you
fun.
want to talk about stress? Yeah, I was a little stressed out. And Doug and Ray, we went around the row crop fields and we were going to spend more time in the pasture. But of course, Mother Nature had other plans. And we would spend a lot of time in the row crop fields. And after it was over, Doug told me, and maybe he was just tooting his horn. He said, Mac, for as stressed as you were, that was one of the best field days I've ever been a part of. And that meant so much to me hearing that from Doug Peterson, because I looked up to that guy, just like I do Ray. I mean, those guys are the top tier list, in my opinion, of people out there. And, I think maybe next year I can have Brian Alexander. I'll have to talk to him, but I don't know. I'll see what I can do. Maybe he can come out to the field day next year.
That guy didn't know anything.
Baloney. Probably know more than me, man. You farm where it's hard or ranch where it's hard. My farm where it's easy, everybody says.
Every place has its challenges, and places where it rains a lot more consistently have less challenges.
Yeah, I don't even want to tell everybody how much rain we've already had this year because it's like, you're not in a drought. I'm like,
But
I
you
know,
really are in
but
a
it all
drought.
comes the first
It's
5 months.
bad. It's really bad where you're
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great, but I will say, CK, that we're pretty blessed that, we I'm still grazing cows. My wife and I did feed 2 bales of hay because we went to St. Louis last week, and so I gave them 2 bales just because I felt for them. And last winter we fed 3 bales of hay. That's all we fed to all of our cows, and we just keep them grazing. We're far enough south. The only thing that can stop us from grazing, it seems like, is ice. And there's a lot of planning that goes involved with that system. And it seems to work out pretty good. My cows can graze through snow. They might be Southern mama cows, but they can do it just like the deer do it. And they show me that every year. Every year we have, that week or 2 of snow, and it just works out and they just dig through. But it's this system is so easy. Everybody, every field I have or every person I talk to, it blows my mind of how much feed and hay and mineral that ranchers and farmers put out there. I was on a conversation today with a guy from Texas, and I told him, I haven't fed mineral in 3 years now. And he said, well, do you have any calves to sell? And I said, well, yeah, not to toot my own horn, but last year we actually calved 100%. So every mama cow on the farm had a calf that was alive. And so that's not going to happen every year. That already hasn't happened this year, but I don't think that the system is really all that complicated. I mean, it's really easy to judge. It's really easy, to measure biomass. And like times like this, like I take off 7% every month of dry matter because I know that we're losing moisture. The grasshoppers are desiccating crops. The deer are still grazing. So I just take off 7% every month. And if it stopped raining now and didn't rain until next May, I'd have enough forage for all my cows until next May.
Wow.
All right.
And
Mac, hold up, man. Like sometimes you just got to pause or take a breath. But so you talked about measuring your biomass, and that's a question I get a lot. And I'm going to try to make some content real soon about, how I measure grass and the different methods I use to measure grass. But what are you talking about when you're talking about measuring biomass, and then lead back into, the percent losses due to dry down and insects?
yeah, so I mean, as well as I do. So I guess I'll get in the second question first for the most part because it's one that's a little bit more complicated. So during dry spells, it seems like the grasshoppers really take off in our area, and that might be everyone's context throughout the country. But personally speaking, every time it's dry throughout my lifetime, the grasshoppers come on hard. And so, how I kind of come up with that 7% loss, you figure in, if a plant on average, is around, let's say 10%, water throughout the plant. And, every month, I've talked to Gabe, and he's been sometimes almost a year without much rain, and he can still graze. And, it's that water percentage comes down. So you have to figure that in. And how I originally come up with that 7% was really this simple. It sounds kind of dumb, but I looked at how much in 2012, I was looking at, I had some pasture back then. I don't have that ground anymore, but I looking up how much the grasshoppers eating on a paddocks what I call paddocks. Back then it was just like every 30 days they'd move to a different area, but let's just say paddocks for the sake of this.
Okay.
And I looked at the plant, and it was a lot of the broadleaves, and it looked like they took off, about 5% of the plant, and it seemed like, because I was on a 30-day rotation back then, pretty black and white. I didn't know what I was doing. I was dumb. I was young, and it seemed like they were taking off about that much of the plant. And so, I figured 2% loss of moisture to 5% for the insects, and that's where we come up with. Now, to answer your first question on biomass, there's a lot of ways to check biomass. You can take a yardstick out there. If you're talking perennial grasses that are short, like what we have, fescue, stick it in there. And if you, go to where you feel like it's the average on that place that those animals are grazing or getting ready to graze, I should say, go out there with the yardstick, measure up your most dominant plants out there, your top 3, let's say it's fescue, orchard grass, and red clover. Okay. Take the averages of those 3. Let's say that you're going to take off, hopefully, depending on what time of the year it is, if it's spring, approximately about a quarter to a third of the plant. So figure that as much biomass they're going to take off. And if you're talking summer, we're going to take off probably about half of the plant material because we're slowing the rotation way down.
Right.
And so let's just give you a rough idea. If you got 24 inches of grass and you want to take half, you go back down to 12 inches of grass. And what you'll end up doing, at first, that's how I did it. When I first learned this system from Alan Williams, I was doing it the way you're supposed to do it. But then I
converting everything to pounds and consumption, and then running the numbers that way. You're just down to looking at height.
Yeah. I mean, so height, from the sense, I guess I shouldn't say that it just height, but also you have to figure in what your cows are going to consume per day, right? So let's say a cow on average eats 10% of her body weight a day. So you have 1,000 pounds, she's going to eat 100 pounds of dry matter, right? So your paddock size is going to have to be fit on that. I didn't go into the complete detail, but yeah, your paddock size is going to have to fit into how much forage they're going to eat. So I kind of left out some details and said, glad he said that, Brian, because that's really important, because you can put cows in, running 1 million pound stock density for, 20 minutes and have the same impact, that you can on running a paddock that's a half a mile long, by, 8 feet for a day, with 30 some head of cows. So you can have the same impact, with whatever stocking rate. I can run. So I guess that's another thing too. Stocking rate and stock density. We've talked about that before.
Right.
I focus a lot more on stock density, and that's what's important. So yeah, so to kind of, I guess the stupid simple way to put it is just measure grasses, figure out how much they're going to consume, figure up on average. So what I do when I first started out, I just figured out how far apart my T-posts were, and that's how wide my paddock was going to be per foot. So when I first started, I know that my farm is 1/4 mile wide. I know it's really simple, but that's Mac's a simple person. That's how I did that. And so that knew how big an area I need to put the paddocks originally when I first got into this. And really simple method, but it's worked out pretty good. But I've trained my eyes thanks to Jim Garish. I don't remember I was reading his book or if I was watching a video from him. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it was Kick the Hay Habit, if it was a video, but this was quite a few years ago. I know it was Jim Garish, though. And he said that he'd trained his eyes. And I was like, wow, how stupid am I? I used my eyes to observe my crops, agronomy, and everything else, but I wasn't using my eyes to observe my grass. And so I just kind of taught my eyes, I guess you could say, of how much forage I was taking. And I can judge a paddock now, since I've been doing this for, coming up on 5 years, I guess, of how wide my paddock needs to be. And it's relatively simple. So you can train your eyes. And I think that's the best method. I think if you can tell when the cow's grazing area too hard, and I'm not perfect. I would say that I still fail 8-10% of the time, on average, being conservative there, I guess, a little bit, but, I'll overgraze a paddock on accident, but I just might give that paddock more rest. But that's important too, with this whole system that we talk about, is don't be in a rotation. The worst thing you can do on your ranch, in my opinion, is actually being what you would call a rotation. I never graze my farm the same way. Like last year, I grazed my farm counterclockwise. I'm grazing it clockwise this year. It just don't go in a rotation, fluctuate stock density, and you can run as high a stock density as you want with however many animals you have. Just get them narrower and tighter. And just nature is always different. It's always changing. And so just, change your ranch or farm, for whoever's listening to this, that's really important. And don't ever get stuck in what I would call a rotation.
Awesome. All right. So we've gotten at least 4 or 5 new listeners to the podcast all the way back since episode 3. So why don't we back up a little bit? And who are you, guy? Like, let's talk a little bit about
Okay.
Macauley.
Yeah, I guess I should have introduced myself. So I'm Macauley Kincaid. I'm a farmer in Southwest Missouri. I'm about 30 miles north of Joplin, where the big tornado happened in 2014. Now we're up to around 880 acres of row crop land, and we
Mm-hmm.
have around 6 mama cows. So my contacts and my goals on my row crop land is we are 100% no till. We do no tillage. We are 100% cover cropped. We have a very diverse cash crop rotation of over 10 crops. And it's not even really a rotation. It's more of like a shooting target of webs. Um, we also, we started implementing cattle on row crop land. I believe in 2016 was the first time cattle met row crop land. And you know, I always give this spiel. I wanted to no-till, and the key to no-tilling was cover crops. And the key to I want to know how to pay for cover crops. So the key to cover crops is cattle. So every one of the land that we own, and of the 880 acres, the only land that we do not own is about 128 of that. We own the rest. And we the key to cover crops was cattle, and so we have fence on all of our farms but one that we own. And the only reason we don't have any fence on that farm yet is because I haven't put the water infrastructure in yet to be able to put cattle on that farm. So, I mean, really a little bit more of my background, diving a little deeper, how I got started farming. Everybody always asks me, how did you get started farming? When I was 20 years old, I lost my dad to cancer, and I inherited my first 60 acres paid for and cleared. So I got kind of I got kind of a financial jump there with the first 60 acres to leverage for the rest of the farm, I guess I should say. So I just kind of dove all the way in. I knew I couldn't afford tillage equipment because it didn't make sense for a young farmer to even afford a disc, let alone, much else. And so on my farm, all I have is a tractor, a drill, a planter, and a roller crimper. I don't own a combine. I don't own a single piece of tillage equipment. I don't own a brush hog. I'm pretty well basic and simple, you know.
What's more important,
So
the
you can,
tractor or the roller crimper?
ooh, probably the tractor because it runs the planter and the drill as well. I've only got one tractor, so it gets switched around a lot, Brian. It's like, oh, I got to put on the drill this day. We got to put on the roller crimper tomorrow. Then it has to be on the planter by tomorrow evening. And we have to do this and have to do that. So it's the workhorse of the farm for the most part. Oh, I guess I did forget to mention one of the most important pieces of equipment I have on the farm, which is my Polaris Ranger. I should say that is probably the most important. We do way more custom grazing of other people's livestock on our land than I have my own cows. So it is a big part of my wife and I's income is our Polaris Ranger and custom grazing by far. So it's pretty important. Uh,
They're handy like a pocket on a shirt. It's awful hard these days to get around and run an operation without a side by side. They save so much wear and tear on a pickup, so much fuel, and so much time.
for sure, man. I'm way too lazy. I'm not gonna go out there and walk and put up polywire.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to. I've got it set up with a thing from Livewire on a 4-wheeler.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yep, yep.
We can run quite a bit of polywire off of that. My side by sides all have doors, so they're less than optimal for building fence out of.
Mine's just an open station Polaris, but it's we bought a new one last year, and it's a nice machine. I mean, it's a really nice machine and a lot better than what I used to have. I used to have this 2012 Polaris with like I don't even know how many hours. I don't know how that thing's motor never blew, but it was a lot of hours. I'm gonna say it was like 4,100 hours maybe when we got rid of it.
Oh wow.
It had a god, yeah, it was wore out. I mean, I had replaced about everything on that thing besides the motor, but it was shot. So good to get a new one.
So let's talk about your cash crops and your cover crops and rotations with cattle. Like, tell me how all that's worked the last year.
Yeah, so we've been pretty dry. We cut off rain about June 3rd. Um, and we had probably our annual rainfall before May 20th. So people always are like, oh, what? You get 40 inches of rain. Yeah, but it comes in about 3 months from about February to May. It's really great. And so that's kind of when you need to be planting your cash crops, as most people know. This year, row crop wise, I'm going to say I'm probably going to have more failures than successes. I have I have some good, I've got some bad, and I've got some ugly on my farm this year. My corn, I would say I'm going to be able to probably pick for actual harvestable grain about a quarter of my acres, because the rest of it was pollinating when it was over 100 degrees for the 2 weeks, and we never rain, of course. The soybeans have a really good
Hold
chance.
on. I'm not a farmer. Tell me what that does.
Okay, so when corn's pollinating, you need the male and female to pollinate together, right? So you need to have rainfall to be able to soak the pollen down to the silks to pollinate the corn. So, and also corn will not pollinate when it's above, I believe, 92 degrees. And as you know, we've been well over 100 degrees for I don't know how many days. It's down a little bit now. We're back in the 90s now, so we're pretty good there. But it's been a very hot summer. So like I said, only about a quarter of my corn I'll actually be able to pick. But the great thing is I can put cows everywhere else I have corn that's going to be a failure. So I've already got guys calling me wanting custom grazing because hay's so short this year. So custom grazing went up 50 cents a head this year. So that's good. I mean,
50 cents a head?
Yeah, 50 cents a head in my area. Yep.
A day?
Went up. A day. Yep.
Huh.
And
that's good to know.
My Milo looks really good. I'm really happy with my Milo. It's gonna be good. My Korean Lespedeza, it still has a really good shot because it doesn't start flowering until about August. So it's gonna start going to seed in late August. So it's gonna be okay there. My sunflowers were a flop this year, I'd say. We had really terrible insect pressure come on, and they wiped them out. And I chose not to go the standard way and use an insecticide. And so I just let the grasshoppers desiccate the sunflowers down the stems. But the way I raise my sunflowers is a little bit different. So I still am going to have good grazing come next fall if everything works out right. How we raise our sunflowers is we go with a cereal grain in the fall, and then I frost seed red clover in February, and then we go in after harvest of the cereal grain and we plant our sunflowers into the red clover. And so what I like about that is the red clover, you kind of want that, synchronized effect or mycorrhizal fungi with the legume being with the sunflower, because sunflowers are high nitrogen using plant.
Right.
And so you kind of want the two to have this symbiosis. And since I don't use very much fertilizer at all, we haven't applied any P&K in 3 years now on most of our farms. I want that symbiotic relationship between the grass and the broadleaf to, hopefully fix the nitrogen for the sunflower. So even though the sunflower crop will be a failure, it was an open pollinated sunflower variety, not very expensive, and I'll still be able to graze a red clover if we get some rain and the red clover can come back next fall. And we also got a grain harvest off of that. And the grain crops were really good this year. Wheat made 90 and the barley made 60. So I was super happy with my grain crops this year. So I guess it sounds
with the price of wheat, I'd be happy with 92.
Yeah. I am pretty happy. Like I said, I don't know. I shouldn't say that it's going to be a failure. I think actually my wife and I will probably make just as much money as we probably did last year, because the grain prices, what we will have, are so much higher and our inputs are so low. But I just want success on every farm. And I have all this thought process. I have all these ideas that I want to do every year. And when weather hinders those ideas I've worked so hard and so much thought to put into, kind of bum a guy out. I mean, and you just you got to stay positive and just know that next year's going to be better. And when I really think about the overview of my farm after I just talked about it, it's really not that bad. There's a lot of people that are going to be in a lot worse shape than I am this year. And so I'd say that crop insurance will bail out a lot of farmers. But, as I've said before, a lot of my crops I can't get crop insurance on because I raise so many different specialty crops. So, but I think the farm's pretty resilient because we have so much diversity on our farm that we'll be all right.
For sure.
Sorry. I went to feel again and just cut off. I always do that.
You're good.
It's all right. You're good.
Brian, do you have a garden right now?
Yes, we do. And the corn took off. I mean, I got the corn in third week of April, 22nd, 24th is when by the time I got everything planted.
Yep.
We sprouted the seeds inside. Like I'm talking about planting 400 corn plants, right? So we sprouted the seeds inside to make sure that they were going to germinate. Went out, each one of them in their own little special hole with drip irrigation. Um, Came back and covered that up with prairie hay, thrown chicken and duck shavings out of the chicken and duck house down the rows and out amongst the plants. Planted some pole beans.
Oh, nice. Like a milpa. Yeah.
No, just the straight up pole beans for to get the nitrogen.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to do milpa because squash beetles are kind of a thing,
Okay.
and the milpa mix I had left over from last year was like it was like a 43 way blend, and I think 27 of them were like squash, melon, cucumber type situations that those squash beetles just love to be on.
Mm-hmm.
So we stayed away from that. The chickens have been in there for quite a while, doing a lot of good bug control. I think obviously I'm no corn growing expert, right? I know how to grow Indian grass, and that's not even close to corn. Um, I can see I know a lot of them didn't pollinate. I know I had a lot of pollination problems. And yeah, I can see that the hot weather kept everything from pollinating correctly. I'm also having something really weird happen. Like I'll have immature kernels start rotting and getting fungus inside the husk while it's still in the ear and the kernels are still developing. I even had
Are
one.
they like big white puff balls? Is it smut?
No, it's not smut. And it might not be,
Okay.
it'll probably look different anyway because this is I grew some atomic orange and it was a flop. It was bad because just as soon
Yep.
as it was starting to want to ear out, because that's like an 80-day corn. As soon
Okay.
as it was wanting to
Yep.
start to do things, it got super hot and it just got super, super hot and it never really pollinated well. But the Wade's giant corn, oh man, I've got some 10-foot tall plants. It's pretty cool stuff. Um,
Wow.
but it's not pollinating completely. And I've peeled back a couple ears and there's some rot. And then there's even kernels that are trying to sprout roots while they're in the
Oh.
ear. Does that make any sense to you?
Germinating in the
Are
ear.
you over watering?
We have drip irrigation.
Are you over watering though? That's not what my question.
I don't think so.
Okay. Because typically with fungus, and diseases like that, and typically they're, I'm going to call soil-borne diseases. I would actually call them water-borne diseases. Some of the stuff you're talking about, like mold and stuff like that, can be caused from too much water.
And yeah, that's my thought too. But it's been so super dry here, and the rot, the mold, it's all the way up in the ear, 3 foot off the ground.
Right, right.
So
But where's that plant water from?
yeah, yeah, water moves inside plants. I just figured that out.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like our bodies in a way.
Yeah, yeah, circulatory system. Oh, how about that?
Yep.
So yeah, the corn hasn't been great. Tomatoes went in kind of late, and they are just now starting to really produce. By this time this comes out, we might be up to our eyeballs in tomatoes, but we've had potatoes. We've had a lot of potatoes. We've had some good onions. We've had a lot of salads from different greens and spinaches, and even a little cucumber and some carrots and peppers was the most recent thing to be harvested. So there's some peppers we're working on. Not like not green peppers and red peppers, like evil little purple peppers and little black peppers and little ones that are red but
No,
are supposed to turn a different color when they get ripe. Like I look at some of those,
no.
she says, "Hey, this is supposed to taste just like a habanero, but not be hot." I'm like,
No, thank you.
"No thanks."
Negative, Ryder.
So garden's doing good. We got a better bed of potatoes yet to dig up. So we're really, really hopeful that we'll have potatoes for most of the winter and tomatoes for most of the winter. And some
Hey, I got a recommendation here. You should try masquerade potatoes.
masquerade.
They're beautiful. They have beautiful purple blooms. They're a gorgeous potatoes. Just Google masquerade potatoes, and you'll be like, I got to get me some of those.
I'll write that down. Masquerade.
They're like a deep purple. right?
They're very deep purple. Yeah, they're beautiful, and they're an old heirloom variety.
We planted them not this year, but the year before. They're okay, no, actually, because the skin's white. Never mind. We got like true purple potatoes, and I did not like those.
Oh, really?
I think
These,
so. Yeah.
I like ones. They're good. They taste good, and they're a little bit smaller, but I like, just like for when I with like roast or something like that,
Yeah, this is meant to be like a red potato, but with purple skin.
Okay.
That's what
Okay,
you're
red
talking
potato purple
about?
skin.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, no, masquerade is actually white and purple. Like, so it almost looks like part of it's been peeled. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like splotchy, if that makes spotted, like white and purple. It's kind of spotty. The potato itself, yeah,
Okay.
or the potato seed. I don't know how you say that. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
the potato. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a Holstein cow, but purple and white. Yeah.
right.
I'm not all sure what kind of strange potatoes we have, but I know there's very few of them that are white. There's some that are black and purple and red
Mm-hmm.
and white that are red inside or that are red outside and pink inside. Yeah. Potatoes are cool.
They are. They are. And a great way to raise no-till potatoes is I learned this off Gabe Brown, and he stole the idea from Roost Stout. So I called him out on that because I read Roost's book. But anyways, you lay your potatoes down and then you put like a thick, 2-3 inch layer of hay over the
Yep.
top of them.
Yep.
Gabe just took her idea a little bit better with alfalfa because potatoes need, pretty high use of nitrogen and phosphorus. And so, he'd lay the alfalfa hay, which alfalfa is of course high in nitrogen being a legume, over the top of the potatoes, and they'd come through and be really excellent. And so that's the method that we use in our garden is what I call the Roost Stout method with the Gabe twist in it with alfalfa.
I'm just thinking of there were a couple places where the prairie hay that I put in my corn
Mm-hmm.
was real heavy with some vetches because it was cut. I think it was cut like mid-August last year. The vetches were still in bloom. That's nitrogen.
Yeah.
Yep.
The corn where those two big patches of vetch were, those two big kind of clumps of vetch were in that hay, seemed to be doing pretty good. And I guess maybe that makes a little bit of sense why.
Yeah. Yeah. Carbon nitrogen ratios are pretty important in everything, aren't they? It's kind of the basis of how life kind of, I guess, cycles in a way, if you think about it. If you've got a low carbon nitrogen ratio in your residue, it's going to break down a lot faster and turn those nutrients back to the corn crop. If you got a high carbon nitrogen ratio, it's going to take a lot longer for it to turn back because the microbes are going to take longer to consume it because they need that 2 parts carbon, 1 part nitrogen at the beginning of the cycling period to start cycling.
Speaking of chemical breakdowns and drought, do you have any Johnson grass that you're worried about grazing?
Well, I guess kind of a double-edged sword there if you want to talk about that. So there's some different philosophies behind that. I've read quite a few different things about prussic acid and nitrate.
Let's go ahead and open the can of worms. And by the time this episode comes out, it'll be probably too late for anybody to do anything, but there's always next year.
Okay. So one thing to keep in mind, when Johnson grass has been stressed when it's little and you have a regrowth in a dry period, you're going to have a higher chance of prussic acid. Anytime there's drought stress on regrowth. And also, most of your nitrate accumulation in sorghums or Johnson grass is actually in the lower 6 inches of plant. Approximately about 92% of it is in the bottom 6 inches of the plant. So if you're not grazing it down to the dirt, you should be okay from the nitrate standing, the nitrate point. But I don't really think if you're applying nitrates, it should be a problem, but I can't back that up with science or data. I don't really have any data points or university studies to back that. That's just kind of my theory, so don't hold me to that. And
okay, all
like
data
I said,
is anecdotal.
What's that? Yeah,
but all data is anecdotal.
Yes,
it is, and every bit of data has lies and money flowing through it, I'm sure. So one thing, another thing on sorghum that I do personally on my farm or on Johnson grass, is if we have those areas that are high in Johnson grass, I'll just put the poly wire around those areas where the cows can't touch them, and I'll let them almost go to full maturity. So even on a drought spell like, or I don't want to say drought because Gabe would kill me, but dry spell that we're having, even on the dry spell like we're having right now, if you let the Johnson grass go to maturity, you shouldn't have a problem with prussic acid or nitrate poisoning if you're not grazing it too low. So both of the main concerns with Johnson grass are both eliminated for the most part. And you know what prussic acid is? I mean, prussic acid is a big deal. Another way it can have
I know what it is, but why don't you just go ahead and explain it?
Okay, so it's cyanide gas. I mean, it's cyanide gas coming out of the cell membranes of the plants. The cell membranes expand from drought stress, or I forgot to mention earlier, a freeze. And so when the cell membranes expand, all of a sudden now we've got prussic acid, apparent, and we have to be careful, or cyanide gas, whatever you want to call it. And so, what cyanide gas does, it comes in the body, and I believe it restricts the oxygen flow throughout the body and the animal, and they essentially suffocate to death, is the way I understand it. So not good. It cuts blood flow off, and it can have a lot of major issues, especially in high parts, when it's very, very serious. With nitrate poisoning, what I found, because I almost had a big major boo-boo one year grazing sorghum that was too short, that wasn't ready to be grazed. I went out there after a day of them being out there, and they're all huffing and puffing. Yeah, I put them on dry hay for a couple of weeks. And a lot of that, if you think about it, it's almost an imbalance of carbon nitrogen ratio in a way, nitrate poisoning is. So hear me out for just a second.
Okay.
If I believe if you supplement plenty of dry hay and make it a larger part of sedan grass that's high in nitrates, I think the effects won't be as severe, and you can keep grazing it. And the reason for that is because that cow's gut energy and protein or carbon nitrogen ratio is then balanced and leveled out. And so you can kind of almost control that. And another thing, speaking about a cow's gut, I want to run something by you, Brian. I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you guys before, but we know that healthy soil should have close to a 1-to-1 fungal to bacteria ratio, correct? Yeah. Well, the very first time I ever seen mushrooms on my row crop land was after I grazed cattle. And this is another thing that I believe I don't have any data on or ever heard anybody else talk about, but I believe a cow's rumen is close to 1-to-1 in the fungal to bacteria ratio in the rumen, because the first time I grazed cattle on row crop land, I'd seen mushrooms on the cow pads. And I think there's some sort of link that we don't really understand between cattle and grasses and how they interact with each other. And so when animals graze, all ruminant animals, I believe, have this. When they graze grasses, we're actually helping to return that fungal bacteria ratio back to where it should naturally be, around that 1-to-1. And so that's very, I don't know, that's just an opinion of mine, an observation I've made, but I think it has a little bit of merit to it about cattle.
Well, I think that there, to some extent, that over the last, I don't know, let's just call it 80 years of fungicides, I think we've used enough of them that we've killed off a lot of the beneficial fungus. We've created blank spots blank spots for fungus in the world because we killed it with fungicide, and something that's just a little bit more resilient to what we used to kill the last thing with moves into that area, and it turns out to be not as good. Like maybe some of the fungus or mold that I'm having on my corn, or black death mold that seems to be everywhere in the country. Is that just here because we displaced something better that died with all the fungicides we used?
Ding, ding, ding. Here's my opinion again. So I know you guys always love when I say that, but I believe it's actually lack of following the principles of nature, lack of diversity. If you're in a corn, wheat, bean rotation, you have 2 years of fusarium carryover. So that disease just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And because it has a host plant. If in a diverse pasture, in some of my pastures where I have, probably over 100 different species of grasses, forbs, legumes, trees, shrubs, whatever, you don't see those issues be prevalent. And that's because we have plenty of diversity out there. The reason why, what you said, the black death mold is what you want to call it, runs across the country, is because it has a host. There's corn raised all across the country, and it has a host plant. And then if we want to talk about mycorrhizae fungi, we know that tillage destroys the colonization of the spores, the mycorrhizae fungi, and so it'll eventually die off, or it'll starve to death without a living plant. So, I mean, we have caused so many of our issues. Most of our drought issues are, in my opinion, almost 80% caused by farmers or ranchers. I don't believe it's caused by emissions from vehicles. I believe it's actually a farmer rancher issue more than it is a smog, or, I mean, that stuff plays a role. But when I think about, what 200 some million acres of row crop land a year that's tilled. So every time you till, you force oxygen in the soil, carbon monoxide is expelled back to the atmosphere. To get rain, we have to have transpiration and respiration from living plants cycling, causing the water cycle to happen. So if we have long periods of tillage, we're just wrecking the system. And I'm not pointing the finger to be a jerk, but I'm just saying that, we need to look in the mirror sometimes when we want to point the finger at everybody else. So sometimes maybe the biggest problem is actually, us, and we need to look at our reflection and kind of think about how we can do better and be more environmentally sound and have a better positive impact on the country.
I think
on the world.
The clear vision is that we can all do better. Like all of us in livestock and food production involved in food systems, we can all do this shit a lot better than we're doing it now. For
sure. And so, not like I said, didn't mean to step on your toes there, Brian, but that was my opinion. I believe it's, diversity of plants, lack of diversity of plants, creating host plants by having too tight of a rotation and row cropping and tillage, and, just basically not following the principles of nature, the principles that, we look at the native prairies and how they function, just mimicking that. It's nothing that's like new age type farming. It's just going back to the way that it worked when we didn't have to add all these inputs. It makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yep. So speaking of inputs, I know you don't use any, but how bad is
I
use very little? How bad is $5 diesel fuel hitting you?
Not bad at all. It kind of hurts our trucking company a little worse than it does me on the farm because, we don't have very many passes of fuel. I mean, my tractor, let's just talk about my corn program for a second. We have a drill pass for the cover crop. So, and the tractor gets with the drill about 7.5 acres an hour, and we're burning, roughly around 6 gallons an hour. And then we go to spring, we have a roller crimper pass on cover crops that can be terminated with the roller crimper, and which doesn't cost very much fuel because you're not running your tractor at very high RPMs either. And you can run pretty fast. And then we go with our planting, and we hire, if we need to have the herbicide sprayed. Some of our farms have now been 2 years without herbicide. But sometimes, there's an issue that needs to be addressed for row cropping to be successful, I guess you could say. And sometimes a herbicide is necessary or necessary evil, especially if you have ryegrass in your cover crop system. So yeah, I mean, and then they have the combine costs. And sometimes like this year, we won't have that, and we won't have some herbicide costs in some farms. We'll just have a cow grazing and a little four-wheeler running around moving the polywire every day. So, it's a lot less than, like, not to point at some of my neighbors, but some of my neighbors make a fall tillage pass, litter pass.
I don't think any of them listen anyway, so go ahead, point them out.
Yeah.
Just don't name and shame.
No, shame, right. A couple more tillage passes. Then they finally plant after about the 6th or 7th pass. They finally plant their grain. Then they'll have multiple herbicide passes for 2 modes of actions or 4. And then they will go on to their V5 fungicide. Then they'll go to their tassel fungicide with an airplane. And then they'll combine and they'll pick the corn. And then they'll put that corn in a bin. They'll haul it to their bin. And then they'll haul it back out of their bin. And when you think about how much fuel it takes to move from the time they plant the grain, before they even plant it, and I didn't even mention some other things that they could do also in there. By the time they actually decide that they're going to plant a crop the following fall, you're in a 12, 13 pass system just to get grain to an elevator for it to be processed into what some people call food for cattle, I guess. Not me, but some people call that, but
right.
It's just insane. It's insane of how much energy goes into producing grain.
And it sounds like your 3 passes to produce a corn crop minus the combine is about 2 gallons an acre.
It's not very much. I mean, I filled my tractor up twice this year, so it, not a very big tank. I didn't need to fill that probably the second time, all the way up. I did. So relatively low expense system. Like I said, if we do spray, we do hire our co-op spray. and then they rip us off on chemical costs, but that's all right.
That's what co-ops
And
are
like
for.
this year, yeah. They were originally supposed to be a cooperative to help farmers, but somehow money got involved. Some weird things happened, and now,
Shareholders got involved.
shareholders got involved, and now you see that their CEOs, drive now probably $80,000-$90,000 pickups and have great big houses. I don't know, something weird happened. I'm not sure what happened, but that's above my pay grade, I guess. So, I just go along with the flow. But yeah, I was going to give an example. This year, I planted this milo field in this beautiful cover crop stand, and got a really darn good stand for the most part. I've got some places that's patchy. Got a really good stand, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to do herbicide on this field. Mother Nature had other ideas. The soybeans from last year decided to germ that either shattered out of the combine or shattered out of pods. And I had soybeans with milo. My first thought was, okay, I'm not going to spray the soybeans because, legume, grass, plus, plus. Well, the milo was stunted and the beans kept growing and they were outgrowing the milo. So I decided to desiccate the soybeans. It was a decision I made, you know, so we had a harvestable crop. Sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do on row cropping. And that's one thing I hate about row cropping. The pasture thing is so simple in my system. There's no herbicides involved. There's no even thought of an insecticide. I don't use insecticides in my row crop, but there's not even a thought of that. There's not much that can go wrong. It's such a minimalistic system that works so efficiently, is better for the environment. I preach all the time about regenerative ag, right? I've had this discussion with some of my close friends, and I say this publicly. No form of row cropping can ever be truly sustainable if that's what we're trying to get. A diverse pasture with diverse amounts of types of livestock is the only truly sustainable system in my opinion. And I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people with that, but I think that's the truth.
That's okay. I'll jump on that hill with you and plant a flag.
Okay.
The days of planting annual crops of yearly planting of annual crops that require a lot of input, those days are numbered. Now, I'm not saying that it's completely going to go away, but the days of that are numbered. And we talk about regenerative, we talk about sustainable, and what is ultimate long-term sustainable. We have to regenerate things, we have to scale down to get back to a point where things are sustainable. And maybe it is some sort of pasture cropping system with livestock integrated, where 1 out of 3 years you're getting a crop off that area, and you rotate livestock around between perennial pasture with annual crop strips in it. Anyway, I'm dreaming here, and we don't have visual aids, so I'll shut up.
Well, one thing, Brian, that's harming this movement is government. They've got too much of a chokehold on farmers, and it's not them helping us. It's truly a chokehold. Because if you think about the whole basis of crop insurance, it's based off of wheat, corn, and beans. What is ironic about crop insurance being based off those three things? What does the United States trade to other countries? So what do we ship a crap ton of carbon and nutrients over to other countries with? Corn, wheat, and beans. So, and that's why they have crop insurance on those things. It's a system of setting up for this minimum. It's this reductionist system that is baloney, and it's caught. And a big part of the problem is truly government. It is government choking down the farmer. Farmers think, oh wow, we're getting a new STEMI package. No, you're getting aid to raise more corn and soybeans and wheat, so that way they can trade it to other countries. They're not helping you. I hate to say you, but Uncle Sam is not in your corner of this ring.
Right.
He's in the opposite, and he just put his gloves on, and he's ready to take you out in round one. So, just farmers need to be aware of that, and think about the entire logic and the basis of row cropping. Our ancestors row cropped some, but what else did they have? They may have took in laying periods, what they would call them, where they put in perennials for 3 years and grazed them. So, we didn't get synthetic fertilizer until 1952 in Missouri. We didn't get synthetic fertilizer until 1952. Right. So how did we farm all those years without synthetic inputs? Okay. So, it always blows my mind when people say they have to have, I'm going on kind of a tangent here, a rant, but it blows my mind when people like farmers think they have to have these synthetic inputs, because I always go back to that. I'm like, well, how did everybody do it before 1948 in Missouri? Well, that's different. No, it's not. Actually, our soils are more poorly degraded now than they were back then, even. So, it's amazing. And and there's have you ever always noticed there's always a new product, and this is going to give you X, Y, Z in yield, right? I mean, I'm talking about, CK. There's a new biostimulant that amazingly is just protozoa, but it's going to give, or a azotobacter. It's an azotobacter bacteria. It's a nitrogen fixing bacteria. You're going to put this on your crop, and it's going to give you a heck of a lot of yield. It's going to give you 10 bushel on average. Well, how come in row cropping, when you add all these different things, you're supposed to get 8 bushel from this, 10 bushel from this, 9 bushel for that. Well, I should have 500 bushel corn. Well, how come I'm picking 200 bushel corn? It doesn't, X plus Y does not equal Z or whatever. I don't know. I sucked at algebra, but
2 plus 2 does not equal 22.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So it's just, they always sell you this stuff based off of yield. That's what I was getting at. They always base you these products, and they sell them to you with, you look at your yield you're going to gain. And so I'm not opposed to trying products on my farm. I've tried a lot of different products, done side by sides. Most of these products are crap. I mean, they really are. They're just crap, and they're selling you just crap. P&K, I believe, is an entire farce if you just keep living plants in your system. I don't believe P&K is even 1% of what matters to crop yield. I really don't. And P&K is one of our most expensive inputs on a farm. And even ranchers, a lot of ranchers put, in P&K down. And I think it's a farce. A lot of these bug in a jug type things are a farce. Now, pump the brakes a little bit. I will reiterate, I think that some mycorrhizal products on an early no-till cover crop system might be beneficial for that farmer. They're just going to do side-by-sides to know whether it is or not. Mm-hmm. But a lot of this stuff it's just basically crap. I mean, it's just crap that they sell to us, and it's not true. And think about this for a second, Brian and CK. Think about this. Who sells us these chemicals and these fertilizers mostly? Bayer, right? Okay, so the products that we use to raise our food, we use their products. And when we get sick, who sells us the medicine as well? Who sells us the medicine? Is it Bayer?
Last week, I talked about the Georgia Guidestones, which means the ATF, NSA, CIA, and FBI are already listening. So let's get all the rest.
Yes. I mean, it's true, though. Think about it. It's true, though. I mean, they sell us the crap that's supposed to help our crops, but then when people get sick, they sell us the medicine that's supposed to help that, and then when we get cancer, they're going to sell you the
CNN News, to try to fix sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah.
And the next news segment is about that you need to get another vaccine. Yeah, there's no conflict of interest there. None.
No, definitely not. And also, these pharmaceutical companies would never, ever try to persuade a politician to view their way. Not ever. They would never do that.
No, and they're of the utmost integrity, and I know that they would never try to buy off any scientists or any researchers to ghostwrite or to falsify data.
Jonathan Lundgren. Yeah, I know.
All right, let's take the sarcasm hat off for a second and keep going.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I cannot cover everything that's going on my farm, like what you asked me earlier, within even probably a 6-hour segment, but I will highlight some of the views and the things that I visualized on my farm, that anyone can come on my farm. I have an open door policy. It's free. We give out farm tours all the time to people that just want to come see it, whether you're from the city or you're a farmer or rancher. We have an open door policy on our farm. And some things I've observed on my farm this year is, number one, way more diversity in my pasture, and my soil on my row crop land is starting to have gorgeous structure, at least 3 and 4 inches down. Beautiful aggregation, 3 to 4 inches down. And I've also noticed that the cow herd this year is some of my best cows I have ever had. I mean, I've got four stud bulls that I consider really way above average South Pole bulls. Um, and I know I'm kind of biased there because I raised them, but they look very fantastic. And speaking of them, and speaking of my field day, did I tell you what else happened before my field day?
Are we talking about the one back in May?
The 10 inches of rain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did I tell you what else happened there? 40
Enlighten me,
some
sir.
mama cow South Pole down river. 40 some mama South Pole cows down.
That's less than ideal.
Yep.
So how'd that situation work out?
Okay, so there's a water tank where I've gauged the high water area before, and I thought, okay, I'll move the cows up past this tank. They'll be safe. Never seen the water get there before. So you know what happens whenever water gets up big? The cow, or when it was raining really hard, I should say, the cows decided that night that they would go back towards the hedgerow, which ironically is next to the river. And then they got island. They found themselves on a little island, 40 some mama cow South Poles. And of course, the poly wire that I'd set up the day before to try to help keep them off there was also underwater. And this was not supposed to be this big a rain. They were shocked when it happened. Go figure. That works with the weather.
I've had 7 inches on
And
a 0% chance day before.
yeah, that's how I felt that day. So talk about being sick, waking up that morning and seeing my cows on an island. Well, as the river kept increasing, pretty soon they were all swimming downriver. And I called a kid that works with me. And I had another friend that showed up, and we swam in the river, and we lost 8 animals downriver. I don't know what happened to them. I would assume the worst. But those South Poles, I tell you what, are survivors. They swam for, I'm not exaggerating when I say probably 3 hours. They swam for 3 hours straight against current. And when these animals come out, they were exhausted, and I was exhausted, and I thought I was the world's worst rancher on this planet. And
that feeling will come back over and over and over through your career. we all feel it from time to time.
Yes, yes. And what I was going to say though was how quickly they rebounded.
Okay, yeah.
By the time I got the cattle back to the pasture that evening, and then and another one showed up later, like the next day or 2 or 3 days later, I don't remember. A few more actually did show up. By the time they got back to grass, they did not know that they were stressed. And these bulls, like there was a bull, his number is 116. So the 1 stands for 21, and then he was the 16th calf born. And he was all the way across the river, and I got this weird call that sounds like I don't know what you call it, if a frog and a donkey combined for a cow call, that's what my cow call is. So I sounded the frog donkey horn, and he put it in turbo, and he swam across the current to me, came to me. He's like, there's my human. He's gonna get me safe.
Yeah.
He swam all the way across the river, come up on land, and you know what the first thing he did after swimming for that many hours was? Started eating grass, standing there right next to me. It was insane. And he is one of the best looking animals on the farm. He's one of those 4 that I said was a stud. He is just built. And I think about it, it's because he had such good exercise swimming in the river. He's built. He's just stout as can be, just muscle, and looks amazing. I like I said, I just yeah, that was a very humbling experience. So yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a year for ups and downs. I will say it has been a roller coaster, but ultimately, my wife's healthy, my kids are healthy, I'm healthy. The animals right now are still grazing. The row crops are thirsty, but they're surviving. The sun's shining. It's a good day. It's a good day, and it's a good day to be a farmer or rancher. We are. I am thankful almost every day I step out on the land and look at the land and be able to work with the land every day. It's just it's a wonderful, gorgeous thing that we can do. As farmers and ranchers.
I think we're honored. It's an honor. It's a privilege to be able to
Mhm.
care for the land and raise food. And I just wish that government regulations and public perception were a little different and maybe not quite as hostile sometimes.
Right, right. But hey, man, it takes people like you making a difference. This podcast, it takes everybody. This is not one person cannot do this. It takes Alejandro in Mexico. It takes Dr. Christine Jones. It takes Gabe in North Dakota. It takes you in Kansas. It takes me. It takes Russell Hendrickson in North Carolina. It takes Jimmy Emmons in Oklahoma. It takes everybody. It takes a collective whole of people to try to change the normal. And it's a community. It's a community of well-minded people. And there's people that that have made huge impacts that didn't necessarily come from agricultural background. Take Jessica Nad, for example. Did
Oh
not
yeah.
come from an agricultural background and has made a huge positive impact on all of this. She was actually the first one that found me and got me, I guess what you could say, the public eye, and just there is so many people making a huge difference. And some of these companies, man, some of these companies, they're trying to step up. General Mills is trying to step up. They think what they've been doing in the past, I don't want to speak for them, but the way I take it from outside looking in is
Mhm.
that they want to change. They want to do better. Um, Multiple companies, Manivals Incorporated, Cooks Venture, uh, even McDonald's is even trying to do it. I mean, McDonald's is in talks with some of the people that I'm friends with and involved with. There is major companies trying to change, and this is not government pushing them to change. This is not because of regulation or being forced to change. This is a human aspect and a human uh, interval in our lives where we're trying to change to help regenerate our climate, our soil, our environment, our people, our animals, our legacies. It's all together. It's just one whole, holistic, united group of people, and it's just gorgeous. And I just can't I can't blabber enough about it. As you can tell, it's really cool to see all this come together.
And I think one of the things that's driving it, like a major driver, and CK, I bet you'll either back me up on this or you'll tell me I'm wrong,
Yeah.
is all the companies starting to worry about their ESG scores, their ESG
They're all
giving
getting
scores,
ASD arms. Yep. Yep.
because that's like, that's for lack of a better term, that's a woke business will have a high ESG score and be, worry about the environmental and social and cultural justice bullshit.
Mhm.
I worry about some of the definitions of that, and I worry about some of the paths that could lead us down as far as tying an ESG score to a personal level,
Right.
and some of the ramifications that could have with digital currency. That's a whole nother conspiracy theory rabbit trail. Um, but the ESG, that's going to be reported to big investors. And so, yeah, you'll have big green investment funds that have billions of dollars. And if a company's not, working towards bettering their ESG score in certain ways that, the investors are going to look for, they're not going to invest with them.
Right.
And I think a lot of companies, like some of the ones that you named, I'll go ahead and name drop a couple: Cargill, Burger King. I think they're
Yeah,
really almost in a panic right now of the promises that they've made that are coming due in 6 or 7 years towards the end of the decade, to be carbon neutral. Like, I don't think any of them knew what that meant when they made the promise. I don't think any of them had half of an idea what that meant when they made the promise. And, they're trying to rapidly improve their ESG scores to maintain their appeal for financing, because the whole, the Wall Street finance model is changing. It's going to a lot of crowdsourcing, and the younger group of investors has access to a whole different kind of information, and they have entirely different values than the last generation of .com investors had. So they know they've got to change the game, or they know they've got to change their public perception and how they do business. I'm just wondering, if some of these companies are really bought into it for the right reasons or not. And that being said, we maybe shouldn't question a company's reason, or an organization's reason for wanting to be involved in regenerative agriculture and sustainable food systems, whatever angle they're coming at. Like, we can find common ground in reducing inputs, reducing supply chains, and trying to take care of our communities. And if we
Yeah,
can't find
and a
common
lot of
ground there, maybe we shouldn't do business.
well, and also, another thing, Brian, is a lot of these companies don't understand what carbon is. They don't understand. They think it's this stagnant object that you can just place in the soil. It stays there forever. It's not. That's whenever Indigo, when they first started calling and tooting everybody's horn, and they promised you all this stuff. I said, do you even understand the carbon cycle?
Yeah.
And how are you going to measure? Are you measuring water extractable carbon, or are you measuring the 50 to 58% of carbon in organic matter? How are you measuring this? And so, carbon is a cycle. It's just like the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle. It's not this stagnant object that we just move around in place and then it's there. And to be carbon neutral, to me, the entire terminology doesn't make any sense from a company's view, because I don't see how they can ever claim to be that. Because you think about it, whatever products that they have to haul those said products. So they're hiring outside trucking companies to hire those. And I
But
own
those
a
aren't
trucking
their
company. I'm bashing
emissions.
myself. Yeah, right. That's not their
It,
emissions,
it
right?
goes back to the
But
difference between scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Do you know what those are?
no.
Okay, I got a good car analogy, and it's probably inaccurate. And if you got a better one, go ahead and write in and explain it to me. But so, like, we're building a car. Okay, our scope 1 emissions are the energy that we use to put the sub assemblies together. Okay, and get that thing out the door. From the time those parts land till the time that assembly leaves, that's our scope 1 emissions. And that's what they're worried about. Okay, that's what companies like Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's and Long John Silver's and Pizza Hut, that's what they're worried about. They're worried about their scope 1 emissions. Like, how's our carbon change from the time this crap hits our door till the time it's in a trash can going out the backside or the customer leaves with it. That's what they're worried about. So scope 2 is going to be all the various sub assemblies that go into the car. It's going to be the box of tomatoes, the box of onions, the carton of flour coming to Subway to make the sandwiches. Okay, those are scope 2 emissions. So, what all emissions are required to produce, transport, refine that product? Okay, where it gets really wild is when we get down to scope 3 emissions. Okay, so then in the car, you're talking about the emissions from the mine to mine the iron, to mine the coal, the emissions at the steel plant, the emissions at the rolling mill, the emissions at the forming die, the emissions at the subassembly plant,
And the employees, right?
and all their employees. So a simple business with short supply chains like ours, okay, we can potentially survive a scope 3 emissions analysis and come out looking really good. Will Harris has done it. Nobody else can do it.
Okay.
It's not possible for anybody else to survive it. Okay, I can't say that because this is probably going to last forever. I find it very, very unlikely that in 2022, any business can survive a scope 3 emissions analysis.
With employees, you mean?
Even without employees. I mean, even if it's just a one-man
Okay.
show.
What about okay? Hold up, pump the brakes. What about like a farmer, um, who maybe just produces food for himself?
Look, if we're talking an Amish farmer with horses, okay, I'll get behind that, right?
Okay,
But
but so you're saying it's not impossible? What I'm saying. So
it's
so
not
maybe
impossible.
right.
Amish farmer without any inputs that's, tractor drawn machinery, I could get there. I could get that he's got,
Okay.
on doing regenerative stuff, right?
Right.
I could get that they'd survive a scope 3 emissions analysis and maybe even be quite positive. I could probably get to scope 2 and be positive, but getting to that scope 3, which is going to be all the machinery that I need, like my gator. Well, that's going to be a hard push.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's just is that realistic though for where we're at ever? I mean, I don't know if that could ever be the. Man, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see where we're at with the industrial system, you know,
Major
how we could ever
change.
even major change, right? But people are gonna have to learn to live without the conveniences of everyday life. I mean, the convenience of not having Walmart, the convenience of things like that. You know, when you talk about the scope of that, and you know, there's probably some. We definitely have some advantages by creating emissions. I hate to say that, but there's quite a few advantages, and my views kind of, I guess, smash on each other because I believe in more independent businesses. You know, my first thought yesterday, one of my first thoughts, I shouldn't say my first thought, but one of my first thoughts when I was driving home and I drove past where Mark had his wreck yesterday was we live on baseline and there's a wreck every single week here. And it's a short stretch. Every single week there's a wreck. And the state will not fix this road. It drops off 5 feet at a straight angle off the edge of the road. I mean, it's steep. And these trucks get off of it and cars get off of it all the time. And I thought if this road was privatized and this happened one time, they would be scared to death of getting sued.
Exactly.
And they would change this road instantly. And the fact that it's paid for via taxpayers, me and you, it is not fixed. And so someone who the community obviously cared so much for and so much on Facebook about that man, about Mark, maybe his life could have been spared if government wasn't involved in our road system. So see how small that is. You know what I'm saying? See how small of something that is not privatized becomes an issue. And what I was getting at with that was there's a lot of things that I feel are conveniences that I enjoy with big business because I'm sorry, but like it's sure handy being able to go to the gas station and when I'm headed to, you know, somewhere and stop and get gas and grab a quick snack that's terrible for me, that's probably going to give me cancer and drive on by my own free choice. By my own free choice, I like to have that, you know, of like, okay, I'm going to put this poison in my body. It's
I had a
terrible for
Snickers
me.
bar
And
last
this big
night, so
business.
I'm not going to judge you.
But I'm just saying, you know, I mean, but that's where I draw that hard line between environmental conscious and political. That's a tough way to put it, but political viewing, and how I view politics and how I view businesses and how I view the government. There's a hard line there, and drawing a hard line, you know, it's they can sometimes be the same thing, but other times they can be completely counterintuitive, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I definitely understand.
You definitely get me.
Yeah. So what else is on your mind, Mac?
Well, a few other things. I would like to hear more about your cattle operation. I would like to hear more about how your cows are doing.
My cows are doing great. We've been on a salt and scenery program since early May. Um, haven't had any supplement at all. No fly control, no insecticide, nothing. Haven't had any problems with any pink eyes, weepy eyes, bad feet, nothing. I did do a week of mineral water treatment, which I think definitely helped level out some what I was seeing that I thought were copper bumps. They tended to shrink a little bit, and some cadmium issues that I was seeing in some of the customer cows in the spine. That's going to be a ridge between about the hook bones and the shoulder bones. When you start seeing that ridge, especially when you start seeing the individual vertebrae in it, that's indicative of a cadmium problem. And the mineral water really helped clear that up this year too. Um, they're really good. I mean, the cows look better than they did last year at this time, which a lot of the old timers will say when it's hot and dry, the grass is really hard. It's really hard. It's really punchy. It's really got a lot of punch. And I'm definitely seeing that this year that, yeah, they're sucking down whatever they can find and they're kind of having to hustle for it and find it. Primarily 30-40% of it is weeds. Corrientes are half goat anyway. So they're out there licking willow trees at 9 o'clock in the morning and trying to eat my oaks down. And, but yeah, they're just going to town. The Corrientes look, I mean, they look great. All the young stock, man. And okay, so some of my 2 year olds are some of my 2 year olds aren't a whole lot bigger than my 1 year olds, honestly. I've got some 1 year old cross, but most of my 2 year olds are straight up Corriente. So we're going to expect them to be a little bit smaller and a little bit finer than the rest. Almost all of my 1 year olds are going to be crossbred. And I've got some really great looking 1 year olds. I think I've said it before on a podcast, but so last winter, it was like late November. I moved out of the northeast part of the ranch, which is where I was for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was gone for about 2 weeks. Well, I'd been out of there about 2 weeks. I wasn't gone. It's not like I ever go anywhere. But I just didn't go back up there and look because, you move these things 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 times, they're there. It's like,
Right.
it's counting. I know they're all here. I saw the last three that are always the last three. We're probably all here. So I wasn't paying much attention. Anyway, a couple weeks later, I looked and there were two of my yearling heifers that were separated from the main herd back up in this, big cell of the ranch. And I tried to get them back a couple of times. And where they were, there's a couple places on the ranch that are just, if you get cows stuck in them, it can be real damn inconvenient to get them out of just because of terrain. Like you can't get from here to there on a horse, turbo razor. Like you just need to have a helicopter or you're going way around. And by the time you go way around, those two would slip past and go somewhere else, or, they'd slip another draw that I'd have to go all the way around. So I fought with them several times and ended up saying, you know what? Screw it. I will leave the gates open so you guys can come back close to the herd. They never did. So I had two heifers, two yearling heifer, or two, baby heifer calves that weaned themselves out of the main herd, had the run of about 600 acres for close to 6 months. They did not get salt. They did not get protein. And I didn't even go up there and break ice for them. And those are two of the best looking yearling heifers running around that herd right now. One of them is probably the biggest. Yeah. If she's not the biggest, she's on the top 3 list for weight.
Huh. Well, you think about that. They had free access to everything that was good. They had access. I mean, 2 cows on 600 acres, they had access to everything that was good on the farm. And so they got choice all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's one probably reason also. And also the fact that they didn't have the stress. I mean, that's what's good about having a big herd like what you have, because it actually creates higher competition. And so you actually have better genetics come out of a larger herd. And those small ones, those are not, I shouldn't say small ones, the two that were by themselves didn't have as much stress in natural competition because they're just by themselves. So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a heck of a lot of sense, actually.
But ever since we got them back with the herd, they're in the middle. Like they're with the group.
Really?
They're not off by themselves. Like they're checked in to the group. So you were talking.
That's the.
Go ahead.
The rest of the cows.
Yeah, they're staying with the cows now. They're like, okay, we spent our 6 months out on sabbatical. We're good. We want to stay with the group. That was kind of scary as shit.
I wasn't thinking that. Like, we scared them.
Just a little bit ago, you were talking about your South Poles, and I don't know if you know this or not. If you listened last week, you would to last week's episode. Is I got a bull that's half South Pole, half Mashona.
Ooh, did that by chance come from Seth Losack?
No, it came from Michael Kinsey by way of Richard Coomer in Texas.
Seth Losack's doing the same thing.
Interesting. So this little bull's dad, I call him Carlos. Carlos's dad, his name was Hamish. It was also owned by Michael Kinsey. Hamish now works for Joel Salatin at Polyface.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Small world.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And the other bull I have out right now is a Fleckavy influenced Simmental that's working. So
Have you ever looked into oh hmm I just went blank on their names. They're only found in California now. Um hmm cannot think of what they are called. A little bit bigger body, but they're a hill animal. Um, they're a little bit bigger than I would probably want, but they are, man. What is their names? I have to look what that. I have to look what that breed is. I just went blank, but I'll text it to you later. Cannot think what they're called. I can see them. I can't think what they're called.
happens to me all
They
the time.
yeah. I'm an airhead, man. If I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, so it's like trying to keep Mac focused is hard. My wife says I can laser down, and she's amazed at what I can do. I say I feel so scatterbrained. Like it's like how do I explain it? It's like taking a jar of marbles and shaking around all the time in my head and trying to pick out the one to pull a thought from. And so it's like all the time.
I don't know how to tell you this, but you probably are ADHD, and that's okay. Just
For sure.
the world is made up of all kinds of different minds.
Mine is definitely not one of the good ones.
Good and bad is a different perspective. That's not even important. It's yours. It's the
Do
one you
you
have. You just have to, we just have to learn how to use the tool that's in our head a little bit better sometimes and how to harness its power.
yeah, like I said, Ray and I, when we're on the same plane, it's hard to keep a consistent conversation because we're like everywhere. Like anytime me and him do anything together, we're like bouncing around, and we go back to step one, and we go back, and we go to step eight, and then we go back to step two, and it's then we forget we did step one, so we go back to step one just make sure we did step one. It's a mess, but we enjoy each other, and Ray's and I's conversations, they are normally about 30 minutes long, and what we originally called each other about, we never actually get to. Then we have to make
Forget.
another phone call after. Yeah, we have to make another phone call after we're off the phone to ask them what we're supposed to ask them the first time. That's happened to us multiple times.
I know how that feels. I feel personally attacked right now.
It's bad, man. It's really bad. Um, you know, is there? I mean, I guess Ryan, is there anything that you want to know more about my farm or how I raise things, or is there anything else that you want to get out there that other people can hear? I mean, I don't do podcasts that often. I actually turn down a few. Um,
I go to do this every
because
week and run my mouth. Is there anything you want people to know?
I mean anything specifically that you narrow me down on. Like I said, that marbles and the jar shaking is what I'm dealing with.
I feel that. I intensely feel that. Some days more than others.
Here's all my kids. They just stepped in here. Sorry, Dad. It's okay, buddy.
How many are we
Let
up
me
to
just
now?
step out here. We're at three with number four baking.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah. So no, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy around here. I always thought about I got like 25 kids, so it's absolutely insane.
If they're like you, it probably feels like 25.
Yeah, they are actually. My son is very much like me, except he's smarter than I am. So like he I'm gonna shut the door, they're chasing me. They my wife's in another room laughing. Did you hear her?
Yeah.
No, but my son's a lot like me. He just kind of like bounced around everywhere, and except he is really physically gifted and he's gonna be taller than me. And also he ranked 90, he was in the 92nd percentile for academics in first
Wow.
grade. And so he's reading at like a sixth grade reading level, so he's really, really sharp. I don't know where he got that from, but yeah, he's super smart and he's really athletic. It's different. His mind's like mine. It's just that everything's focused and he's better at everything than I am. So
That's what you want.
yeah, I guess I don't know. He's yeah. It's a lot. And the two girls, Emma and Evie. Emma is three, and so she is in that still terrible two age. I think it should have been called terrible threes because if she doesn't get her way, it's a big scream fest, and we got to go over like, hey Emma, this is the reason why you can't punch your sister in the face. And then the little the littlest one, the little fat one, Evie. She is our eater. So whenever big brother and little sister don't eat and big sister don't eat their food, she eats their food. She's also loves our pigs. So we got 3 coon pigs on the farm. She loves the pigs. She loves all however many 100 chickens we have. I don't even know how many chickens we have. It's insane. She loves all the ducks. She's my little farm girl. And Emma, the 3-year-old, she likes to go with me anytime I go on the 4-wheeler. Every time I fire the 4-wheeler, Daddy, I want to go. And then about 2 minutes in, she's like, "Are we gonna go home? Or is it almost time to go home?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll be done here in a little bit." So 25 minutes later, I take her back home, and then she didn't have very fun. Mom, Kayla goes, "Did you have very much fun?" She goes, "No, not really." It's like, oh, okay. Well, she always wants to go though, so that's what I deal with every single day. But that's all right. It's great being a family farm, you know.
Get to spend all the time in the world with your kids.
Yep, and raise the kids that the way that you want to raise them. It's pretty great, and try to do the best you can as a parent. Man, being a parent has probably been my hardest job ever. It's tough.
Well, if you're about ready to get out of here, I'll let you go. CK, you got anything?
I was just wondering if are you doing a lot of consulting for others? I remember last time we had this conversation, you were like, I'm getting offers. I don't know what I want to do. Are you doing
Yeah, I turned down all the offers I got.
Yeah.
I've also turned down some label offers, I guess you could say. I've turned those down too as of right now. I don't know where my niche is right now, but I don't think it's with a big company, or in my eyes big. I think that I just would rather focus, like you guys said, on my family, on my farm, on my other enterprises we got going on.
Yeah.
Real estate, trucks, semis. I've got plenty to do. And so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess, does that answer your question? I think I don't think right now I'm going to do consulting. Now, if you buy cover crop seed off me, you're going to get a 30-minute lecture on soil health. That's just how it works.
Perfect.
So,
or are they buying the soil health lecture and getting free seed?
Yeah, that's what it should be. But no, if you call me and one of the first things out of your mouth is, "Hey, I heard the cover crop guy. There's this NRCS program that I'm involved in." Click. That's the reason why you got the click, because I don't have time to deal with someone that just wants to hand out. That's not worth my time, and I'm not worth the seed sale, in my opinion. So done that to quite a few farmers and pissed off quite a few people. But if, like I said, if you come into the conversation about wanting to just don't care what the cover crop is, and you just want to get the $40 an acre, I'm not really about that. And I'm not going to take the time with you. You can go buy a seed off somebody else. So
it's fair enough.
Draw a hard line there.
Good.
All right. So if somebody wants to buy seed from you, get a hold of you, send you hate mail, where do they need to
go? Easiest way to contact me is my cell phone. I've got it on me 7 days a week. I get 90 to 100 calls a day. So be patient. I will get back with you. And my phone number is 417-660-9207. Again, that's 417-660-9207. And you can also add me on Facebook if you want to follow me on social media. Facebook's the only one I really feel like I have time for. And my name is spelled Macauley. And my last name is Kincaid, Kincaid. So you can add me on Facebook. I've got 3,000 some people on my Facebook, I think. Maybe, I don't know, more. But I promise I will get back with you. If you call me, I do not answer, because I just funnel through a lot of stuff every day. When you have as much going on as I have going on, and you have all the contacts that I have with the cover crop seed thing and the soil health thing and the trucking company, and then some tenants and the family and other farmers around the area needing help every single day with questions on it gets a little swamped sometimes. So
I can imagine.
I do get back with everybody, though. I do. I really do. I feel like I get back with everyone. And if I don't, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to make sure we'll have a link to your Facebook profile in the show notes, but I am not going to put your phone number in there unless you really, really want me to. Yeah. So if you guys missed his phone number about 2 minutes ago, just go back 2 minutes and listen and write it down. That's about all I got to tell you. Cause I don't know. I feel like if I put it in the show notes, then, you know, all the Google bots and,
Yeah.
you know, all the Russian spy bots, they'll get that number. And instead of getting 100 calls a day from people that actually want knowledge from you, you'll be getting 1,000 calls a day for your car's extended warranty.
Oh, hey Brian, I got a funny story for you. If you got about 5 seconds or 5 minutes, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's lay it on us and let's get out of here.
Okay, not really funny, but I guess kind of one of those eye-opening moments. I was helping a farmer plant beans who needed help and running his equipment because I don't know, I guess I need something to do.
Yeah.
And drilling beans, and they were treated with Saltro, which is the sudden death syndrome treatment. Come to find out, Mac is allergic to that. So when Mac is completely coated in that and goes home that night and takes a shower and Salter is activated by water, I swelled up like a tick quickly.
That's not cool.
And no, and I don't have insurance, stupid Mac. And so I went to the hospital for 30 minutes because I told them, I said, hey, it's wheat harvest. I need to get going. Give me some Benadryl and shoot me with a steroid, and I'm going to get going. And so I was there for 30 minutes, and it cost me $2,140. So all I got to say is, whatever you do, stay out of the ER. That's all I'm saying.
Even if you have insurance, it could add up really, really fast.
Crazy, man. Well, hey, Brian, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. CK, thank you for putting up with me, guys. It's been a blast.
Mac, as always, it's a fun, fast conversation. It's with you, it's kind of like trying to hang onto a fire hose. And I always enjoy the challenge. I always enjoy you and your energy, Mac.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
All right, guys. That's it. That's it for us. We're out of here. Go enjoy your week. Bye.